All right, I think I'll just get going. Thanks for joining. This meeting is being recorded, just so you know. I think you probably got the notification when you signed on. But yeah, I think I'm gonna share screen. If you just want to give me a thumbs up that you can see it. We want that screen. Can you see a slide with North Bay Forest Improvement on it? All right, great. Um, So my name is Danielle Ashton, and I work as a Forest Health Project Manager at Napa Resource Conservation District, or Napa RCD for short. Napa RCD is a trusted hub for technical and financial assistance, as well as educational resources. And our mission is to empower the community to care for natural resources throughout our county. And we have 4 key program areas that include forest health, watershed restoration, regenerative agriculture, and community engagement. Um, and each of these program areas have specific pages on our website if you want to learn more about them. But tonight, we're going to focus on forest health and restoration. And in this program area, Napa RCD supports landowners by providing technical and financial assistance. And we're a good starting point for folks who may have questions about where and how to get started working in their forests or on their properties, different avenues for financial support, and then connecting with other community partners and organizations who work in the forest health field. So this evening, we're going to take a deep dive into the North Bay Forest Improvement Program. Um, and at any point throughout, I'm going to spend some time on slides, but I wanted to leave plenty of time for discussion and questions. But feel free to unmute or type in the chat if any questions pop up and you want me to pause to address those. So we call North Bay Forest Improvement Program NBFIP for short. Lots of acronyms. But this program is offered in Napa, Sonoma, Lake, and Mendocino counties. And I'm dropping a link in the chat box to the NBFIP page. And this program helps private landowners fund forest management plans and implementation work through a reimbursement cost share program. And there are a few key things that we look for and for folks who would be eligible to apply, and that's properties must have between 5 and 5,000 acres of forested land, so a pretty wide range there. Landowners need to be able to pay the full project cost up front, since this program provides reimbursement after the work is completed and then verified during a site visit. And then a couple different types of projects that the NBFIP program can fund. And that one of them is forest management plans, which is you're working with a registered professional forester to create a plan, and that plan can help guide work in your forest, gives you context on special species or sensitive resources. And it's a living document, so as your property changes, the plan can change along with it. You can update your goals or objectives. And the other type of project is implementation work, which is on the ground work in your forest. And we'll dive even deeper into those 2 different project types. And these are just some things, that might make a project a good fit when we're looking at applications, and kind of some reasons why it's great to connect with landowners as like the RCD partner administering the program in Napa County, getting to know the community and the landowners and how, their commitment to sustainable management. Would the applicant be able to implement treatments without this funding support? Does the applicant have an FMP in place or another guiding document, like an NRCS conservation plan, that has some key treatment areas identified or goals identified? And then is the property within a fire-prone community, which much of Napa County is? So there's some things to look at, but not necessarily requirements. So if one is thinking about applying for a forest management plan through this program, um, those applications are typically open year round, so you can apply whenever. Um, and then they are awarded on a rolling basis. Right now, that application is closed as we're looking for more funds to support the NBFIP program. In the future, though, if someone does want to apply for an FMP, you would need to work with a registered professional forester. So I'm dropping another link in the chat. Um, and this is a list of foresters who know about NBFIP, have worked with NBFIP, and have agreed to be on our list that we share with landowners. And then this registered professional forester would apply on behalf of the landowner since they are the forester who would be writing the plan. So they're, committing to taking on the work basically. I think that's all I got for FMPs. For implementation projects, these projects include on the ground work. So if you're looking at reforesting in any areas on your land or taking any trees out, maybe wanting to do some invasive species management, this would be the type of project that a landowner could apply for. And the best way to do that is reaching out to Napa RCD or working directly with a registered professional forester if you have one that you work with already. And then, working together to develop goals and treatment areas, and then creating some maps and then applying online. And the landowner can apply directly for implementation funds, or an RCD partner can apply on behalf of the landowner, or a registered professional forester can also apply on behalf of the landowner. So a couple different avenues for implementation funds. But yeah, the RCD can assist with the application, scoping out a project, working with a forester, and thinking about goals and objectives. So what is needed for an implementation application? And we'll in a little bit dive a bit deeper into the different types of treatments that are offered for implementation with this program, but wanted to give a sense of what the application looks like. It's pretty straightforward. Um, the link for the application will be live next Wednesday on the 8th if you wanted to check it out and see what sorts of questions are on there. But this slide kind of lays it out, just basic contact information and property information, um, and some other things that we like to learn about the property or the applicant is if you're working with neighbors or nearby properties, maybe you're using the same contractor to cut down on costs. That's something that can give your application more points when we're doing our ranking, which we'll look at in more depth in a couple slides. Um, if the property is identified in a community wildfire protection plan, that's something that's good to know when applying for NBFIP. And I know there's many fire safe councils throughout Napa County who have a CWPP in place or have one in the works. So if that property is identified in that plan, points for that. Um, any additional community benefits? Are we working on a fuel break? Does it connect with the larger um, forest health project across multiple parcels? Things like that. And then another thing that will be asked on the application is if the property is located within a low income or disadvantaged community. And this is not applicable for Napa County. So that's a good question. I can pull up a link for, I think that would be on Napa Communities Firewise. So let me come back to that question. So how do you find out if your property is identified in a CWPP? Okay. Whoops. So there is a map on the Napa Communities Firewise Foundation website. Um, Let me pull that up real fast. And it might be worth, I can, reach out to Napa Community Firewise and ask more directly too. I'm not sure how up to date this map is, but let me drop it in the chat for you. Oh, okay. On Upper Redwood. Yeah, okay. You might be included in one then. And it's good to know that if you've been included in projects like that as well, like knowing that there's work being done on your road or throughout your neighborhood, good information as an RC partner to have about the property and the applicant. Um, and then other things that will need to be included, and that's helpful to be included really in the application, is a map, like a project map, laying out the units, and then having your treatments and acreage um, defined. So 20 acres of timber stand improvement, things like that. So those things need to be figured out before applying. And that is what working with an RC partner or registered professional forester can help refine for your application. And additional documents, if you have a forest management plan or a plan with the NRCS Conservation Services, those would be helpful to have as well. And a little bit about the different types of practices that can get funded. I'm dropping another link into the chat box that is our cap rates document. So it shows the different practices, describes them a bit, like a pre and post scenario, as well as the reimbursement rates. And with the implementation, you can apply for a 60% reimbursement or 40% reimbursement, which we can talk more about in the ranking in a couple more slides. Yeah, so for implementation, which folks can start applying for starting on July 8th, those you can write in professional services into your application, and that would support working with an RPF to help guide treatments, units, working with contractors. They can kind of hold some of that more administrative work with for the landowner. So it's nice to have that support sometimes if you have an RPF already identified or you want to start building a relationship with an RPF, a registered professional forester. So I recommend including professional services as much as possible just to get that level of expertise on your project. Then we have the kind of typical timber stand improvement, which is reducing the number of trees per acre to cut down on competition, increase the health of existing strong, healthy trees, um, removing ladder fuels or undesirable tree species. And then we've got brush management, which is what we would look at prescribing if you're looking to deal with French broom or spurge or yellow star thistle, so invasive species. Or if you've got a pretty dense understory in your forested areas, a brush management prescription would be a good fit as well. Pruning is another one that is paired somewhat often with timber stand improvement or brush management. So just limbing trees up at least 8 feet off the ground. So creating more space between the ground level and the crown. So treating ladder fuels, basically, if we're looking at it from a wildfire protection standpoint. A couple more practices that can be included in an implementation application are follow-up slash. So what are we going to do with the woody debris that's created during timber stand improvement or brush management or pruning? Lop and scatter is included in the price of timber stand improvement. And as much as possible, adding a follow-up slash to that or brush management to get the fuel off your land or get it in, chunk it up into smaller pieces is suggested. So there's pile and burning included, just piling, you can burn outside of the MB-FIT program. Chipping and mastication, there's a reimbursement for that as well. And then reforestation for areas that are, wanting to restore forested lands after wildfire or other disasters or pest predation. So that would cover the purchase of trees, seedlings or seeds. If you want to buy shelters to protect them from like vole predation. And then I don't know if it would quite cover like vaca cages, but it could look into that. And then within that reforestation, a more in-depth planning of the spacing between plantings, the planting method, number of trees per acre, where are the seeds coming from, all those sorts of things will need to be kind of described in the reforestation plan. So, and with reforestation, there's probably going to need to be some site preparation prescribed alongside it to get the area ready to be planted. So yeah, those are the key practices that can be prescribed for implementation. And if there's any further, questions about specific instances when they might be best applied, we can chat more about that too. A couple more slides to work through. Oh yeah, pictures. I have pictures. So this is just a pre and post photo of MB-FIT project a few years back that included thinning, so taking out some of these like smaller diameter trees to open up space. It included pruning, so just for reference, here's this tree and this tree here. So they cleared out a lot of these scraggly trees to create space for these larger trees. And then they did hand piling. So here's those piles, and then this landowner was planning to burn outside of the MB-FIT program. So he just wanted reimbursement for piling. This next slide, pretty similar. Thinning and pruning, so taking out these smaller diameter trees to improve the health of the larger trees. But their follow-up was mastication. And mastication leaves like larger size debris, but puts it closer to the ground. So it encourages like the rate of decomposition of the woody debris. And then chipping, smaller than mastication. But one last photo here. The shadows make it kind of difficult, but here's a reference tree here, the Y. Thinning, pruning, same thing, but in this, the follow-up treatment, they just stuck with the lop and scatter, so you see the larger woody debris and fuels here on the ground. And with the lop and scatter, it has to be 18 inches or lower. It can't be above 18 inches off the ground, basically. So I just wanted to show some examples of the different treatments and follow-up treatments, or follow-up treatments that can go along with the initial ones. Yeah, and the application is for reimbursement. So the landowner will pay the upfront cost, whether you're doing the work yourself or with a contractor. And then you would let Napa RCD know when you're done, come out to verify what was done, and then submit a report to the grant administrator, who then kicks in the reimbursement process. So it can take anywhere from a couple weeks to a couple months, just depending on what the funding is. So it's kind of variable, but as we're working through the process, sometimes we can get a bit more specific around that couple weeks versus couple months, at least to let the landowner know what to expect. And the landowner does lead the contractor coordination. However, we have lists of folks who work throughout the county to offer landowners to give them a starting point. Like, here's some people who work in Napa County to, or the forester would assist with that too. They would, if you have professional services written into your application, they would take on that coordination with the contractor. And yeah, so the cap rates document, that would be, we could run through an example too, but it is a reimbursement of the percentage rate. So if you apply for the 60% rate, you would get that much per acre. So um, if you applied for 20 acres of timber stand improvement, number two, at the 60%, you would get 1,728 per acre. And that's just the base that we would reimburse at, regardless of how much you were charged by the contractor. And part of like the application and coordinating with Napa RCD during the application process would be giving an estimate of the reimbursement you would get. So if you want to do 20 acres of timber stand improvement with some pile and burning, we can look at the per acre reimbursement rate and say you can expect to approximately get a reimbursement of $80,000 or something like that to help with planning. 60% is max for Napa County. And can you say a bit more about resources for the people who could do the work if you're doing the work yourself? Oh, there we go. Okay. Um, Brush really chipping that probably would not be doing ourselves since that is what we've been trying to do and is getting a bit tough. Yeah. So it would just be, maybe coming up with an application for brush clearing and chipping and then bringing in a contractor. Yeah, and I know that there are some avenues through like Napa Firewise when they have the county chipping program as well, which you may be familiar and know about. Yeah. So yeah, it could be a very targeted application just to address the brush clearing and chipping, and then working with a contractor. Right. And then just wanted to give talk about a few ranking criteria points. When the operations team with MBFIP is looking at applications after a cycle closes, um, we have this system to help us rank projects. And so this is what we're looking for. And this is also available on the website, but I will post it in the chat too. Where's that link? Here we go. All right, there's that link to the ranking criteria. But yeah, basically, we're looking at what kind of reimbursement rate you're applying for, the 40 versus the 60. 40% reimbursement, you get less funds, but your project receives 5 points, so your project would rank higher. Looking at if the property's been significantly damaged by wildfire, disease, or insects, and then looking at the size of the project. Larger projects tend to receive higher points because you're treating a larger area. If the landowner has participated in a planning process, so does the landowner have a forest management plan, or have they worked with NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation Services, or a local RCD to create a plan? So that's why reaching out to an RCD earlier to, talk through goals, look at treatment areas, think about a scope, to help inform the application can be helpful. And then there's that kind of at the bottom of the screen is a project located in a low income or disadvantaged community, doesn't apply to Napa County. There's a map being a mapping link on the MBFIP website that shows folks if their property falls within one of those disadvantaged communities, if you're curious. Is the landowner's primary residence on the property? If that's their primary residence, you receive 1 point. If these funds were not available, would you still be able to complete the project within 12 months? So we're looking for folks who really need the assistance to kickstart this process to get the work done. Are you, as an individual entity applying, a member of a socially disadvantaged group? And there's some listed there on the screen. Is a project located on lands managed by or for the benefit of tribal organization or used by indigenous people? Will you be completing the project in coordination with your neighbor? Again, just looking for minimizing the cost of a contractor coming out for a single landowner versus working with neighbors and then extending the size of the project. Identified in CWPP, we talked about that earlier. And any other planning document, like a regional priority plan, something like that. And if you're unsure, I think reaching out to the RCD and we can check with all the partners throughout the county. And then the additional community benefit. So shaded field break, looking at ingress and egress for wildfire protection, things like that. So those are the types of things we look at when we're ranking projects and applications. Wanted to end on a few frequently asked questions, and I feel like there's more, but they just weren't coming to me. So between now and when the follow-up email comes out, if any more FAQs come to mind, I'll include those in the email. But folks often, hear about MBFIP from our partners at NRCS with their EQIP program. They're very similar. And having an EQIP contract does not disqualify someone from being able to apply and receive funds from MBFIP. You can even layer some of the project work with the two funding sources. We just want to make sure that we are that the landowner pays at least 20% of the project work. And then how long does it take to complete a project? For MBFIP, the contract is a 1-year contract. So 1 year at the longest, but if you complete it before then, we can start that reimbursement process as soon as you're done with project work or an FNP. And then does your project need environmental review permits? And that's a yes. So your RCD partner would be the lead on that process. So we do have to comply with the California Environmental Quality Act, which does include assessing for sensitive species, cultural resources, and doing an archaeological review. And that's all pretty, given the year-long contract, we move through that process pretty quickly. So we have a good system in place to make sure that we are fulfilling those requirements, but not holding up projects. And if there were an archaeological cultural resource identified in the project area, we just buffer around it and remove it from the project map and flag it off in that project area so that we don't disturb that. And then the applicant is responsible for fulfilling any requirements and for implementation. And I think that's all I've got. I wanted to give a bit more of a comprehensive review of the program and the different treatments, but definitely wanted to leave enough time for any questions or discussion points. So I'll stop sharing screen for now, unless I need to pull something else up, which I can, but Another question in the chat: what are the common projects done in this county so far? Nice. We've got quite a few. We've had quite a few projects that included like timber stand improvement number 2, which is taking out smaller diameter trees, opening up space, reducing competition. And these are in areas, we've had projects out in Etna Springs area with the land trust, Con Valley area, Mount Veeder. So pretty spread out throughout the county. St. Helena, and some of these projects, the follow-up slash treatment was pile and burning and chipping and mastication. So it's been a pretty good mix of the different practices. We have one project that is currently active that is working on reforestation through NBFIP. So that's pretty exciting to see. They got burnt pretty badly in the glass fire. And then we've had quite a few FMP applications as well. So making sure folks have that guiding document. It gives your implementation application more points, but just nice to have that reference point too, I think, for landowners.